We guys continue with a very long and very difficult chapter. Now I'm still back to 13, right? 13.2. So 13.2 is organizational structure. And within organizational structure, the first big one, which I covered last time, was centralization. And try this one and see, hopefully a little better. Yes, and decentralization. One important characteristic here, maybe repeat from last time, is that in Asian culture and in Asian societies and in general in Asian mentality, people are too focused on centralization. It is explained with Asian tendency towards hierarchy and status higher in society. So the other reason is that people, because it's too autocratic system and too hierarchical, people being careful about their business jobs are afraid to make decisions. If they make a decision which is wrong, they will get sacked and out, okay? So, same thing in the Middle East. Nobody's making decisions. Every little thing's gotta go all the way to the top. And I got a classical example of top executives overburdened with making little decisions, most of which are unimportant, simply because low-level managers and middle-level managers don't want to make a decision. Big problem, okay, over here in Asia and in the Middle East. And everybody's saying, no, 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 not my power, not my decision. And they always say the same thing, oh, the boss has got to decide. And every boss says so until it goes to the top guy. And that's a fundamental problem. I discussed the number of arguments for and against. Now we go to second element or second section. Subsection, which is horizontal differentiation. All right, the typical domestic firm, which is not an international business, has what's called a functional structure. Functional structure means that the structure is based on the standard business functions. And standard business functions would be production and manufacturing, then sales and marketing, finance and accounting, customer support. So we're going to have a sales department, a marketing department, accounting department, finance department, customer support department, legal department, HR department. Well, these work, but not really for international businesses. For international businesses, depending on strategy, you'll need a different type of structure. One structure which works fairly well is known as the product divisional structure. In business and management, the key word division means a unit which is relatively independent from the other units. And a product division, which we have in Apple, I've explained before, is you got product division for mobiles, iPhones. You got a product division for laptops. You got a product division for desktops. You got a product division, and they are relatively independent from each other. If you got Sony, you got a Sony product division for cameras. I mean video cameras. You got a separate division for still cameras. You got a separate division for laptops. You got a separate division, they may still have, maybe not anymore, for desktops. They got a separate division for MP3 and MP4 players, okay? So you will have product divisional structure, and each division takes care of its product, including the export abroad, okay? So they got responsibility for, again, designing it, manufacturing it, advertising it, selling it, supporting it for everything. A division is considered to be relatively self-contained, that's a key word, self-contained and independent. Another word is autonomous. Autonomous. In this particular structure, headquarters is responsible mostly for global strategy. So headquarters is looking for global strategies, and each division has and is doing its own thing within the framework of global strategy. And it usually works in in a strategy which is relatively simple. You just try to sell the products globally. Now, when firms initially start out, let me see. Yeah, I can just number these for you again. So, number one, functional structure works, but not really, okay? If you have a product, or especially if you have a functional structure, number three, you get into the so-called the international division. And the international division, again, is a division. But the corporation is focused everything at home, and then it has a separate, special international division, which is relatively independent. And the international division may further be distributed into areas. When I was working in 2000 to 2004 at Sterling Commerce, which was a subsidiary of SBC Communications, this is how the corporation worked. It was all focused domestically, and then there was one separate international division which was focused on sales and marketing outside the United States. It included a special area for Canada, a special area for Central and Latin America, a special area, it's called EMEA. It was about Middle East and Asia, Europe, Middle East and Asia. And the international division took care of all sales and marketing outside the United States, okay? But they were fairly independent. Now, they don't do manufacturing. It's done by the software, all right? They only do marketing and sales, okay? And then support takes care of international customers as well as local customers. Here, the international division itself is, as I gave you the example, it's practically everywhere in all companies. It is divided by geography. And we call these, in sales speak, we call them area. So someone is covering the EMEA area. EMEA standing Europe, Middle East, and Asia. Someone's covering Canada, okay? So you got by geography. There are some problems over here with the structure. One is dual structure. I'll be explaining more. It's basic management. Structures work well in business when the structure is a single line. It basically means that when everyone has only one boss, when you have only one boss, then you're okay. Now the questions and tricks arise when you have two bosses. I'm going to be getting a little later into the most common type of dual structure, known as the matrix structure, and I'll be explaining it fairly soon. In a matrix structure, you got functions on the one end. I'll get into it fairly soon. You have functions into one end, and then product divisions, and then area divisions. So you have area divisions, and then you have product divisions. And if you're working for a specific product, if you're here, you got two managers. On the one hand, you work, let's say, video cameras. You're in video cameras, and then you got a Canada. So Canadian operations will be running video cameras and still cameras and laptops and other products, okay? That's the Canadian operations, okay? But if you're in here, you're gonna have, is your boss, at the same time, the boss of Canada, and at the same time the boss of video cameras. So someone's managing these video cameras, managing the product. And he's managing the product, the video cameras, both in Canada, in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East, and Asia. But at the same time, Canada is run by another guy. And you have this conflict of what's called dual structure. And dual structure means that one person reports to, meaning is subordinate to, two people. And one boss wants from you one thing, another boss wants from you a very different thing, and suddenly you got a conflict. And when you got a conflict, you either go crazy trying to keep both of them happy, or you start lying to the one boss and say, well, boss, I'm too busy with the other one, I gotta take care of other things. And then to the other boss you say, oh, boss, this guy wants from me all of those things, So dual structures are fairly difficult and fairly tricky to implement. And a lot of businesses try, and a lot of businesses usually fail with those dual structures. So here the international division is kind of like it introduces a dual structure which complicates a little bit of things. But again, it's important to understand something fairly simple. As soon as you start running international business, you're going to run into complications and you're going to run into problems. Problems are inevitable and complications are inevitable. International business is complex and it requires a complex structure to deal with it. Let's see what else we got. International, okay. Yeah, another little problem or complication will be lack of coordination between various divisions. For example, you're going to have a functional structure you're going to have of, let's say, customer support, and at the same time you have international sales in Canada and international sales in whatever, and you don't have too much coordination between different departments, and especially the international division. Because the international division on the one hand is very, very, very independent, but on the other hand, it depends on accounting and finance. It depends on customer support. It depends on other functions like legal support from the company. So lack of coordination could be a problem. And let's see what else. So you may have within the international, you may have now two intermediate solutions. The first solution is called, let me use red here, worldwide product division. Worldwide product divisional structure. Or you may have worldwide area structure. So, you choose the one, you choose to have only product divisional structure, and everything is based entirely on product and product divisions. This is how Apple is designed. Okay? But some other businesses may want to do worldwide area structure. You focus on Japan, you focus on Asia, you focus on Europe, you focus on North America, you focus on Latin America. And these will, again, solve some problems and will introduce different problems. So, worldwide product divisional structure will have problems with different geographic areas. Now, this one, the area structure, will have problems with different products and lack of coordination between either products or geographies. Okay? Example will be when a company is introducing a product. For example, one area will introduce it, let's say, in Asia, but the other, if it's an area structure, will say, oh, we're going to introduce it in Europe after 2 months. But if you wait for 2 months in Europe, now the product from Asia starts leaking into Europe. How do products from Asia leak into Europe? Well, Very easy. You come over here on vacation, right? You go and see a very nice mobile, which happens not to be released in Europe and in Germany. Say, oh, this is fantastic mobile. Let me just go and buy yourself one, and next month you bring it back home to Austria, right? So, the product starts leaking from where it was first released, and it goes to other areas. And before you know it, if it's released 2 or 3 months earlier in, let's say, Asia, it's already moved into Europe in other alternative channels than the standard sales distribution channel. So this is a very simple example of, some minor problems or complications or things that you don't want to see happening. All right, let's see what else we have here. The national division, okay. Let's see. So, I already discussed this one, worldwide area structure. This worldwide area structure is suitable when you have localization strategy. So, here's already the first clue in the first connection which I was explaining from the previous 2 lectures. If you have localization strategy, if the market dictates localization strategy, the worldwide area structure is an appropriate structure. Because localization strategy says you focus on China, you focus separately on Middle East, you focus separately on Germany and the German markets, and if you focus on the local market, because there are differences between the differences in the markets, you don't have products leaking from China to Germany or from Germany leaking to the Middle East, you can have worldwide area structure, and it would fit this strategy very well. So, if you got this strategy, you should be looking for this type of structure to fit you well. Now, worldwide product divisional structure is good for, let me do this here now, is good for global standardization strategy. Global standardization strategy. So, you want to standardize, let's say, Sony camera or Nikon specific camera or Canon specific camera, and you want to have it the same in the whole world. You use exactly the same standard product. Now, as I was mentioning before, Apple does not customize, or better say localize, its MacBook. The MacBook is everywhere the same in the whole world. So they use for the MacBook global standardization strategy. By the same token, the iPhone is not localized in any way. iPhones in China are the same as in Bulgaria, same in Germany, same in America, same in everywhere in the world. So you have the iPhone the same everywhere. And if the iPhone is the same everywhere, meaning you are pursuing with the iPhone global standardization strategy, then you will have a worldwide product divisional structure. Okay? So now you get to see how, depending on your strategy, the strategy will fit better. This structure will fit better this strategy. If you got a global standardization, it will better fit this structure. So this structure will better fit this strategy. Now, this structure will be also good for international strategy. International strategy. So, for international strategy, this particular structure is, again, fairly appropriate. So, now you see what I have done slowly but steadily. You say, oh, we got four primary strategies. And say, oh, if you have this strategy, this is a good structure. If you got this strategy or this strategy, this is a fairly good structure, okay? Early on I explained how local companies, national companies will become global. They will become global by, after serving for a while their domestic market, they start exporting abroad. They manufacture at home, they do everything at home, and they just take the product and sell it in a foreign country. If you're a company who's doing this, then you will just use functional structure. You're going to use your home structure, and you're going to add one international division. So, adding an international division is a first step in internationalizing your business. So, in the first step, you just do straightforward exports, you add an international division, and you do the exports according to geographic areas, okay? And later on, as you evolve and as you grow, and you got a clearer strategy, if you have to localize, you will adopt this strategy, this structure. If you'll have to use global standardization, which is obviously the strategy of Apple, they just don't customize their products for different markets. They got a global standardization. You choose this particular structure. So you see how the strategy will, over time, dominate the structure. Let's see what else we got here, just to make sure that I don't miss anything which is important. So, the worldwide area structure is very good for local responsiveness. It is really good. Well, that's what it's designed for. It's designed to be locally responsive in the sense of working the localization strategy. However, the major disadvantages is that it encourages fragmentation. One area works one way, Canadians work their own way, the Middle East works their own way, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong work their way, Japan doing their thing. So the company becomes highly fragmented. And in the early days, in the early years, that might not be a problem at all, but after a decade or after 2 decades, this fragmentation can cause serious problems down the road. So this is a major disadvantage. Okay, let me see if I have anything else over here. Now, the product division structure, this one is, let me see how I'm going to do this. Number 1 is helps better coordination. So, it solves the problem of lack of coordination. We say improves coordination. Improves coordination means that when iPhone 5S or whatever is released, the product division, the division will decide we're going to release it worldwide on this particular date. And on the same date, it's released in China, and it's released in Japan, and it's released in Europe. Or they may decide we're going to have a product release rollout. And it simply means first week released in Japan, see what happens. Second week released in Asia, see what happens. Third week, focus on Europe. Last week, focus on North America. So you're able to focus 1 week at a time on a specific area, and yet everything is coordinated. And if you got any problems in Japan, you work them out for 2 weeks, within the next 2 weeks up until you reach Europe. So it improves coordination. Also is good for transfer of core competencies. Core competence transfer. And the major disadvantage is that local managers in different areas have little voice. So local manager here in Japan has little voice. He can't say much. Local manager in China can't say much. So the problem is the focus is too much on the product, and the area managers are neglected. All right, well, that's natural. If you focus on the area, the product gets neglected. If you focus on the product, the area, the geography gets neglected. And there may be some specifics to, let's say, the Hong Kong market, which the area manager would know, but the product manager wouldn't care about, okay? So the strength of the one turns out to be the weakness of the other, and the other way around. And then we get to what I was beginning to mention early on. It's called global matrix. Global matrix structure. International division. Global matrix structure. Let's do this here. Let's do this here. I'm going to use this as number 4. We're going to have this, the worldwide area structure, as number 5. And the global matrix structure is number 6. So the local matrix structure, first and foremost, is very difficult. You have dual responsibility everywhere, as in dual reporting. I wrote it somewhere over here. Dual responsibility, dual reporting causes big, big, big problems. It becomes very difficult. It is the same thing, challenging. It is most often fails. One of the major reasons for failure, it becomes cumbersome. Everything's got to get cleared by 2 bosses. You can't just do what one boss says. You got to make sure everything's okay with the other one. So it becomes very cumbersome. Same as cumbersome, it becomes very bureaucratic. Too much bureaucracy, too much paperwork. It's the same as clumsy, the same as slow. Just things are slow. Hey guys, the two of you on the back, okay? All right, enough. You're gonna get in about 5-10 minutes. I'm gonna get finished. You're gonna get your break, okay? So, cumbersome, bureaucratic, slow, too many problems. Let's see what else. So, this is great dual responsibility. Let me see what else we got. So, here we call it, again, dual responsibility is the same what I was explaining. We call it also dual hierarchy. Dual hierarchy means everybody's got two bosses. It's got a product manager and it's got an area manager. In dual hierarchy and dual responsibility usually doesn't work well. You need very good employees who can handle this fairly well. You need very good managers who can handle this very well. That's why this is very difficult, very challenging. And that's why, because of difficult and challenging, it turns out to be cumbersome and bureaucratic, and it typically fails. Most companies try and they fail. This structure creates, as a major disadvantage, a lot of conflict. And what's known in the corporate world as power struggles. Not all managers, you gotta understand, in business are open-minded. Many of them are actually fairly narrow-minded. Many of them focus on two things. We discussed many weeks ago, about 6-7 weeks ago, that for many of these people, there are only two things that they want. They want money and power, okay? So, these people, many of them are psychopaths. Psychopaths, you know, are people who are mentally sick, who don't care about other people's feelings, about their emotions. They only care about themselves, pursuing their own goal, no matter what happens to all the other people. I mean, these are. And the worst part is that when you get to the top of business, only the worst psychopaths can rise, and the same applies to the top of politics. You gotta be relatively mentally sick to be able to rise all the way to the top in politics, to become a top politician, and the same applies for business. And if you're going to be rising to the top in business or politics, one of the most important skills is lying. You have to be able to lie. In politics, you lie all the time about everything. And it's very similar for CEOs and top executives. Most of their job is lying, talking nice, talking sweet, okay? They don't really run the companies that well. It's unfortunate, but that's the real world, okay? Maybe you've seen some of this stuff in the documentaries, which I gave you. So, you got a lot of power struggles. Which way? Is this guy gonna have more power, or this guy is gonna have more power? Is the regional manager gonna have the power, or the divisional manager is gonna have the power? And there's gonna be an eternal power struggle between them, and there is always an inevitable conflict. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Okay, so now, because this one is a very common failure, most businesses try and they fail, and then they say, oh, now we're going to do the next big thing, which in theory is really perfect, but in practice, again, tricky. They call it the flexible matrix structure. Flexible, whatever flexible means. Because the standard or the global matrix structure has become in business dirty word, because most businessmen understand that this pretty much fails. They say, oh, no, we're implementing flexible matrix structure. And they say our flexible matrix structure basically avoids the standard problems over here. But the flexible matrix structure, mostly the key there, at least they claim, is focused on knowledge and is focused on information systems and really focuses on corporate culture. Where you try to educate the employees that there will be conflicts, there will be power struggles, and that they should try to work to reduce bureaucracy and clumsiness, and they should try to speed things up. In other words, they say, okay, we're working on reducing some of the major disadvantages of the global standard matrix structure, and they're implementing flexible. Modern business loves to talk about flexibility. Oh no, we are very flexible. We are adjust quickly. Whenever the environment changes, we change quickly with the environment. They like to use this. And let's see what else I have, so I can finish now. Yeah, the one thing which also could have major effects on structure, not related to these, is socio-cultural factors. So, I'll summarize it for you. So, you have one type of socio-cultural factors in Japan, okay? It is known, their business structure and culture and mentality is known as the Japanese keiretsu, okay? Is well known. You got a very different system, somewhat similar but still very different in Korea. It's called Kaibal. Let me write it out. It's nasty English word. This word is properly pronounced as Kaibal. Kaibal is the Korean corporate structure system. Kaibal. Okay? So, you will have a very, very, very different structure in India based on corruption and other things, okay? You will have completely different socio-cultural structure in China based on 5,000 years of history, based on extremely well-developed bureaucratic machine, and layered on top the Chinese Communist Party, which rules on top, okay? And of course, the socio-cultural factors in Germany will be totally different from America, okay? Germany, let's say, is more focused on labor union, protecting the workers. Well, in America, they don't really give a damn about the workers, okay? You can exploit them as much as you want and all the other things. In America, you can have a CEO who earns 1,000 times higher salary than the ordinary workers, okay? So you can have some extremes and other things. So socio-cultural factors could and would determine structure. The other factor that will determine is legal and business system. Legal and business system. Yeah, you got in Japan a very different legal system from Bulgaria, from former Russia, from Germany, from the US. I mean, the legal system in Europe we call continental law, which is based on well-detailed and written out laws. And we studied in the United States, in Great Britain, you got case law. So the legal system is totally different. Of course, you'd expect that the legal system and the business system will affect structure. And just to summarize it over here, I'm repeating, not saying anything new, is that business strategy. So you got three fundamental factors. The strategy being the most important. And the other two factors that determine organizational structure will be, number one, strategy, and number two, socio-cultural factors, and number three, legal and business system. These will be the three fundamental factors that affect organizational structure. All right, good enough for a break? All right, guys, you get 10 minutes.